Amid rolling blackouts in the country, Eskom has launched 3 programs in an effort to supplement the power generation. The initiative is expected to add at least 1,000 megawatts to the grid. So, are there hopes that this will mitigate the latest round of load shedding? Is this initiative going to make any difference at all? Joining me for this conversation is Thomas Garner, Chairperson of the South African Independent Power Producers Association. Mr. Garner, thank you very much for your time. Can we kick off the conversation with that 1,000 megawatts that Eskom is hunting for? How much can you help with?
Morning, Ollie. I think last night I was on an interview with Ryk van die Kerk at RSG Geldsaake, and I was probably a little bit cynical and negative, and I apologize for that. The reality is every program that Eskom drives to bring more capacity and energy into the grid is great. It's good news for us, and it's good news that they are doing it. I think the challenge of this is that it's always more complex than we think. And as Andre de Ruyter said, it's all that energy won't be available with immediate effect, even if some of the power purchase agreements are signed, let's say, in the next week or two.
Yeah. And
that's simply because these type of generators are typically what we call co-generators. And that's a generator that sits on the end of other industrial process, let's say paper and pulp industry, or in Sasol, for instance, they've got some gas turbines that they can operate, the sugar industry, industries like that, where they're actually primarily creating steam and heat for their own processes. Mm-hmm. And as part of that, the excess heat or steam is then used to generate electricity, which they normally use on their own site or wheel to one of the other sites. But then if they, for instance, add additional fuel like coal to this process, they can generate more electricity. And that hasn't been happening for the past few years because the regulator, NERSA, for some weird reason, hasn't approved the program. Mm. So at this stage, those type of generators, they need to, let's say, buy in more fuel, more coal, things like that, and then sign power purchase agreements and start producing. But that's good news overall, and anything can help at this stage. And anything that we don't have to burn additional diesel in the open cycle gas turbines would be great news for South Africa.
I know you speak about the complexities. We're going to talk about NERSA in a moment, because I think you seem to be referring to the so-called red tape that government has been talking about at length. But if you were to just put it in simple terms, why is it so complex? Or why would it be so complex for independent power producers to feed into the national grid whatever excess power they have?
I think there are some political and ideological reasons. That's the main challenge. And then there are some physical, technical reasons as well. On the ideological and political reasons, I mean, it's been evident since the publication of the white paper in 1998 that the ANC government has got different factions. They're centralists, and they are people that would like the private sector to participate, but there's always a challenge in that factionalism on what route to go. So the challenge is that a lot of individuals within the ruling party and in government don't actually want the private sector to participate in generation of power.
Can I quickly come in there, if I can?
Yeah.
Is Minister Mantashe among those individuals?
Absolutely.
Even with his current capacity as Minister of Minerals and Energy, are you finding him to be the stumbling block, even at this moment of crisis?
No, for sure. Absolutely. And I mean, he's done quite a lot of positive things, but that's with a lot of arm twisting from the president and a lot of additional work from Operation Bulundlela and the PCC and things like that. So if there was real political will, real leadership, there would have been much more movement in the years 2014 up to 2020, and then we would have seen much more capacity already online. But I mean, if you just look at IFP 2019, it was promulgated and approved by Cabinet in October 2019. We're almost in October 2022, and we haven't seen 1 megawatt being built since then. So, and for me, that's a simple sign of lack of political leadership.
My goodness.
The second one, Collie, is the technical issues, and that's grid capacity. So there is not enough capacity on the grid to build new solar and wind in areas where there's good solar and wind resource, which makes it more complex. And I think Eskom is working hard to try and sort that out. But it's again a bit reactive. That's stuff that we should have done a few years ago. But at that stage, the Zuma government was so busy with state capture and raping, pillaging, and stealing from Eskom that the eye wasn't on the ball. And now we're sitting with that trouble.
Thomas, can I ask you this question? What meetings, if any, are you sitting in at the moment as chairperson of the Independent Power Producers Association? And I'm talking about specific meetings with government officials or government ministers. And again, I want to press on this issue of Minister Mantashe because you come across as being quite pessimistic about his support for this program. I don't think that political ideology is what is going to save us right now. South Africans couldn't care less about political ideology. But are you involved in any such meetings, and what seems to be the attitude?
Well, yeah, I am in some of those meetings. For instance, helping in the BUSA Energy Subcommittee in discussions with Eskom around grid access. I'm also sitting on the Operation Bulundlela meetings, which is a one-stop shop type effort, reporting to the presidency around sorting out red tape and bureaucracy. And I must say, every Thursday morning, 8 o'clock, and that meeting happens, there's a lot of red tape that's being rolled out of the way. I must commend the individuals that lead that, and I think really a lot of support. We've seen many challenges that IPPs have in getting registration or licenses or grid access or Section 53s or water use licenses, all EIAs, all of those things being sorted out there. So very positive from that aspect. But again, that should have been sorted out many years ago by energy ministers that believe in where we need to go with this country. So it is still challenging to think that the discussions around different technologies are still happening. The IRPs is not yet being updated. There's no real focus on actually getting that done. There's just so much political meddling in this.
Yeah.
And that's why we are where we are. This didn't happen overnight. It happened over years and years, and we've been screaming from the rooftops about this since 2010. And it's just not. There's no real focus from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy on getting this resolved. And there's a lot of blaming happening. Them saying, but let's move. If we want to blame Minister Mantashe, let's move Eskom into the DMRE. And that's not going to work. Eskom is Eskom, and they need to maintain their plant and operate. Mr. Mantashe is responsible for procuring new power and enabling an environment in which the private sector can participate. which is not happening at speed.
Let me ask you.
And that's the challenge.
Let me ask you this final question. In fact, it's going to be two questions in one. You mentioned something very interesting there, and that's about Eskom either remaining under public enterprises or moving under the DMRE, which is Mantashe's office. Are you finding that that potentially is part of the big argument right now in these meetings? But secondly, there are those who say independent power producers are simply too expensive for Eskom to afford. Where do you stand on that argument?
So two things. On the first one, Collie, the Eskom under the DMRE, let me just go back in history. In 2014, there was a DOE, Department of Energy, and the IPP office reported to the Department of Energy, and Eskom was under DPE, but Eskom in 2014 had Mr. Molefe and Koko at the head, many individuals whose names have come up in the Zondo report, including the Minister of DPE at that stage. And the whole setup was just rigged for state capture and for stealing the money from Eskom. And for that reason, Mr. Molefe said in 2014 that they won't sign the PPAs from round 4 at that stage, and hung up the whole IPP program. Recently, Mr. Director, Mr. Oberholzer, and the new management was appointed at Eskom, and they have taken the long and difficult task to clean up Eskom from corruption, maladministration, incompetence. And they're really doing a good job, and we must commend them, and we must support them. But we must also remember that the state capture and the politics haven't ended. So the only reason why people would want to move Eskom into the DMRE is to get Mr. Mantashe to control it, so that he can get rid of Mr. Director and the management, so that they can reappoint the rapists and the pillagers and the thieves at the top of Eskom, so that can continue. That's the only reason that they would want to do that. If they focus on what their task is, to procure new energy in a country which is starved of energy, then they would do us a favor. But I must say that ANC has proven over its years that it's not there for the country. It's only there for itself and the few individuals that want to enrich itself in this process.
Are you convinced that Mr. Mantashe would allow for the pillaging of Eskom again?
I would.
Wow. All right. Let's leave that conversation there. Thomas Garner, Chairperson of the South African Independent Power Producers Association, holding nothing back. Mr. Mantashe, I think that's a very, very serious accusation against you. We're going to have to allow you the opportunity, if indeed you so wish, to come talk to us. These are very strong accusations against you, sir. Hopefully we'll speak to you soon. All right.